Thanks, Joe, for your kind word and nice introduction. So today, the way the presentation goes, I'll be presenting for around 25 to 30 minutes, then it will be like open for question and answer. So if you have any question, just as Joe said, submit them using Q&A button. So our presentation today is about valuing lake water quality in the United States using a national data set on property values. So look at the image at the left side. So it is a classic and very famous image. It's called pale blue dot. And it's a photograph of Earth taken on February 14, 1990 by NASA's Voyager 1 at distance of around like 3.7 billion miles. The image inspired Carl Sagan's famous book, Pale Blue Dot, A Vision of the Human Future in Space, in which he wrote, look at again that dot, that's here, that's home, that's us. So he referred this as a pale blue dot, and the blue part comes from all the water bodies in this Earth. So the water bodies will be blue or pristine when we keep it pristine and when we keep it good quality. So our presentation to value what happens if we keep this water body to pristine condition or improve this water quality. Does it have any economics in it? So that's the teaser for today, to say whether we can keep our pale blue dot as a blue. Without further ado, let's look at what is the condition of water bodies around the world. So we took this data from SDGs data. Although like this data is country reported, they reported by the country administration that how good their ambient water quality all throughout the world. So we find that overall 38% of all water of lakes, ponds, and reservoir area are declared impaired by the state agency. So although that exclude Great Lakes. So we are thinking about, okay, so we need to do something. We need to make some, but we need to justify, like, if we want to do that, does it have an economic value, or does our effort matches the economic value? So all of you are, I hope, familiar with cost benefit analysis. Whenever you are doing a conservation effort or doing something, you need to think about what are the benefit side. So today we are thinking about a partial or part of the benefit of water quality through housing market. So that's what we'll be looking at. So let's look at like why we need to keep our pale blue dot as a blue or pristine condition. So if you look into good water quality or very good water quality has many benefits, such as water-based recreation you can do, or it has very good aesthetic view, which is pleasing. Many people go to different lakes for their recreation for aesthetic views, and it provides drinking water, and you need minimal purification if it is like good ambient water quality. And then it supports all sorts of biodiversity, including fishes and all the birds and other things you can see in this picture on the left down. It also provides cultural value. So given that all these good things a lake or a water body can provide, how do we value what is the value of a lake or what is the nationwide value of all the lakes? So there are many approaches as economists can do. So one of the approaches, like there is two broad categories that we binge into. One we call stated preference, another is revealed preference. So stated preference is basically saying that asking somebody through a how much value this lake is to you in different format, different way. There are many ways of asking this type of question. So it's kind of like survey-based preference calculation. And then you get like, okay, people are willing to pay that much for good water quality, and then you get it. Another way, you don't ask them directly, but you find how they reveal their preference, how they choose something that relates to water quality and what is the value of that. So today we are basically focusing on revealed preference method. So in reveal preference method, how do we value a non-market good, for example, this lake water quality, which is not sellable at the market? So what do? We get market price of a good that is sold, but that is conditioned on good water quality. And we control for all these socio-demographic characteristics of the good. And then finally, we separate out value of non-market good and find what is the value of water quality in this particular sense. So a little more primer, like what we are looking at today. So we are basically looking at, okay, you have a house, if the water quality is good, how much that water quality attributes adds into the value of that house. So in this practice, we are particularly looking at using housing transaction to estimate value of water quality. So think about it that way, like how water quality matters to when you are purchasing a house. Think about like you are at the end of trying to buy a house and everything almost settled out, and you want to take a tour to the house, and you are going through a Lakeview Road, and you find that this image on the beach. So you will give a second thought saying that, okay, do I really want to buy this house? Or did I negotiate price right? Because the lake water quality is not good there. So that's how lake water quality impact housing prices. And through that, we are trying to find out what is the value of lake water quality. So today we'll be mainly looking at three research hypotheses. So one of these, we want to look at if there is a overall positive value associated with ambient water quality or not. And then we want to look into does distance from the water body matters for this water quality? So if I live further away, is the effect decay away? And then we want to look into, we are looking into all throughout the United States. So we are looking into, is there any heterogeneity based on region or condition of the lake itself or time? So these are the three main big research hypotheses we will be looking at. So there are many previous efforts looking into in that realm, but most of this study is at whenever there is a local level study and you want to do another project in another state and another place, what economist or researcher tries to do is something called benefit transfer. So you want to get value for a lake in Maine and justify a project in Minnesota. But the condition of Maine is not directly transferable to Minnesota. So that's why like many economists like saying that opposing that view, you need to get a national estimate such that you don't have that type of benefit transfer problem. So if I look into the literature, there are some studies. So one stated preference study that's done by national level by Carson and Mitchell, but that's really old. It's get a survey in 1983 and they published in 1993. There is another recreational study, so it's done by Kaiser, and it's looking at USDA conversion resource program and find out like how it is benefiting the lake water quality. And also Kaiser and Shapiro published another paper in 2019 that's look into wasted water treatment plant and what are the downstream benefit. And for the specific directly related to our study, Moore et al. In 2020 did a study nationwide valuing lake water quality using property sales data. But we are working at the same approach, but we have more robust data set. For example, Moore et al. Study has 114 lakes, whereas we are using like nationwide 1,600 lakes. And we are using zero data. We are using like massive amount of data to bolster that. So we will be improving and making our analysis robust compared to Moore et al. So that's the premise of previous effort. So talking about data, our property data came through ZTrax. So ZTrax is Zillow's resource wing program. So they had one program called Resourcer can apply and get housing transaction data for research purposes through ZTrax program. So it has parcel data, it has all these housing characteristics, all these building attributes, neighborhood socioeconomic condition, and so on. Along with that, we use parcel data from some open sources and some property sources to match the property itself. And we also, as the ZTrax data go, their data is not really clean. So researchers need to clean it a lot. So there is a lab, Places lab at Boston University, which clean all these data, and we can access the data through that. So one of our co-author who is in Boston University curated those type of data sets. So this is our, in a nutshell, our property database. For water quality, we use two different data sets. One is US EPA's water quality portal. So it is basically a data warehouse where USGS, EPA, and USDA provide data. Also, other federal and state agencies directly can provide data there. So a lot of water quality data set you can find there. We also use Lagos Any at the time when we are analyzing and writing this paper. They did not have Lagos US. So they just had Lagos Any for 17 states. So you can see the map, and some blue shades, these are like location of lakes where they have data. So we merged those two data sets and validated. So why we are interested in doing so, because Lagos Any data set is validated, where is like water quality portal data set and user can upload data. So sometimes there are lots of errors and others. So what we did is that we have precedence of Lagos Any. So if a data set is available for Lagos Any for a lake, we use that. If not, then we go to water quality portal, find that data set, and correct it for geolocation, correct it for measurement itself. So those are two data sets. We harmonized it. And for water quality, we use basically two different measurement. One is Secchi depth. So Secchi depth is measured by inserting a circular disc, which is black and white, and put into the water and look through how much depth it can go, and you can still see it. So when you cannot see it, that's your Secchi depth. That means it's a measure of water visibility. And then you have chlorophyll A, another measure we use, which is kind of contributing to the visibility, but not like completely overlap. So it's a measure of number of algae in a water body and is common metric used by limnologists to measure lake water quality. So given all this and this complex city of the data set, after matching property data set and water quality data set, we have 1,600 lakes that we can use for this study. And you can see in the left side image the distribution of this, and vast majority of this data is northeast, and this data coming from Lagos, as you can see. But for this middle part, I would say in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, they don't have that many of lakes and that many of water quality data provided freely. So that's one thing. Another is like a little bit of white part where those states we don't see any lakes that we can use, because some of these states does not have property data because of that much of property data because of non-disclosure act. So but the thing is, like, although we have in our base study, we said if we have one property cell within 100 meters from the lakefront, then we take it. But if we increase that bar, saying that, okay, we need 100 property cell within 100 meters, then it drops down. So that means that if you compare to Moore et al. Study, so they use like 114, and they don't have that condition. Like they also have a simple condition, but still they can have 114, whether we have 1,600 lakes that measured water quality and property health. So this is our summary statistics and how it looks like. So in our study, we find that on an average, 9% of houses are within 100 meters of the lake. And we find that 100 to 300, within 100 and 300 meter, we find another 15% of the lake. And the vast majority of our data set houses reside 300 to 2,000, which is like control type properties. And we find like on an average 2-meter depth of say Secchi depth, water visibility all throughout our 1,600 lakes that we use. And the property that we use has a 3,000 square meter lot area, and our lake size has on an average like 40 square kilometer on an average. But one note that we did not include Great Lakes, because Great Lakes has all different dynamics than inland lakes that we are using in here. And our average property prices are around like 344,000 in 2019 dollars. So this is the distribution of Secchi depth and chlorophyll. As you can see, most of our lakes are within northeast. We have more data in there for both of these. And we can see that Northeast and Minnesota and part of Michigan has higher Seki depth, a lake with higher Seki depth, whereas like other in the South, especially Florida and Texas, we find like lower Seki depth lakes. And this is our base model. So in the base model, our dependent variable, what we're looking at is the uh, housing prices logged. And we look into two different bins. One is within 100 meter, another is 100 to 300 meter. And then we interact with the water quality itself. And then we use a matrix of parcel and building characteristics. We also use lake characteristics. And then we have census tract by year, fixed effect, and random error term. So this is like basic hedonic model setup. Through that, we can find out what is the value of water quality through properties. So this is our main baseline result. So over here, what you can see is that as the look at this like red box over here, we find that if we increase 1% of Seki depth, then there is like 0.18% increase in property value. And we find that adjacent property has higher impact. And similarly, if we decrease 1% of chlorophyll air level, then we will have 0.1% increase in property value. And from the first two results over here in the gray box, you can see that if you live close to the lake, your property prices are up. And so far we are talking about 1% increase, how much it relates to in percentage term. So if we look into the capitalization effect, that is, okay, we have 1,600 lake, but there are many other lake. We have some property sales transaction, but there are many properties that did not get sold within this study period, so which is 2000 to 2019. So, but if we increase the lake water quality, their price also goes up. So we used market values through tax assessment, and we find that if we increase 10% of Seki, there is a national estimate of 9 to 11 billion increase in property value. And similarly, chlorophyll level goes a little lower. So 10% decrease in chlorophyll leads to 6 to 8% increase in property, 6 to 8 billion increase in property values. But one thing to note that like we should not compare Seki result with chlorophyll result, because those are completely different measures. So 1% increase and 1% decrease in chlorophyll, 1% increase in Seki does not match up. So although chlorophyll attributes to the Seki depth, but it is not completely you cannot use one with the other. So that's why like we should not compare 10% increase and 10% decrease like these two row, but these are standalone values. So now we are thinking about 10% and we are still talking it's a marginal improvement. But if we are interested into more non-marginal improvement, such as let's look at 2012 and 2017 National Lake Assessment data, and they have this Seki depth measure in there. So if we want to go to that pristine condition, whichever they referred as reference lake in LA, in NLA. So if we use that, then what we find is that there is a much bigger willingness to pay, or a much bigger valuation is possible, such as $25 to $26 billion we are looking at all throughout the lower 48 states. And we also look into heterogeneity of our effect. So we run like around 30 models, and we show that our baseline specification is robust. And if you look into this violin plot, it is fat in the middle. That means most of our estimates are closer to each other. And the red dot is our baseline. So our baseline estimate, what is the number you are seeing so far, falls within in the middle. And that means this is a good representation of our model. And we also study heterogeneity, saying that, okay, if our houses are closer, does it has more water quality effect than if it is further? So if you look into all this red circle, with the exception of the gray box is like within 50 meters, then you can find that as we go farther away, our water quality effect goes away. So people who lives nearby to the house value water quality more through property value than properties that is farther away. So after like around 300 to 1,000 meters, it is insignificant effect that we find. We also look into like, does it matters on the when the property is sold? So you can see like over the time it varies a little bit up and down, but on an average we find that our baseline estimate right around the middle. We also looked into, does it vary based on the which region you are? So we are using EPA EPA ecological region. So we use upper Midwest at base level, and we find that northern and southern Appalachians has largest effect. Southern Appalachia has more than double. And southern and temperate plains, we find like there is approximately zero values, and northern plain has also has zero effect. But it is unclear to us what potentially driving the zero and negative effects. But these reasons, what we find in our data set, that we have fewer lakes and do not make up a large portion of the sample. So in conclusion, so we had 3 research hypotheses. So we wanted to see if there is a positive value association with ambient water quality. We find that 1% increase in SECI leads to 0.818% increase in property value, 1% decrease in chlorophyll level increase property value by 0.1%. And we also find that if you live close to the property that is close to the lake has more water quality effect than property which is further away. We also find that the magnitude of the impact depend on location and time and time of the property and the lake. That is all, and I will accept any question you might have.
Thank you, Saleh. Really cool stuff. And my mind is, I have to admit, kind of blown by the amount of you subtly refer to it as data harmonization, but pulling together the national data sets that you guys did for property values, water quality. That's a really impressive effort, and then making the two talk to each other. So major kudos, really important results. I will, at this point, ask folks, if you have questions, please submit them in the Q&A function. I see a couple questions in already. Just a reminder, if you want to ask the question again, just hover your mouse over the bottom of the screen. There's a Q&A button, and you can submit your question that way. All right. First question, they echoed what I just said. They said, excellent presentation. They were curious whether you considered any lake attributes in your models. perhaps property values were higher associated with lakes with more shoreline amenities. So attributes in addition to water quality, but shoreline amenities, maybe it has a boat launch or it's those sorts of things.
Yeah, I have in our data set, we have not used any shoreline or any amenities that like if it is has a boat launching facility or it has a nice sandy beach or not. So we have not used that, but what we did is that we use a proxy for lake characteristic, is lake size. So we are assuming that as the lake is big, the facility or other thing is correlated. So we use lake size as proxy for all this because we did not have a national level ready to go data set that we can use for this kind of like where we have boat launching or not. But we take care of that through lake size.
Yeah, and then a similar question was, so you mentioned lake size was a factor. Was overall lake depth a factor in your models?
So we did not use like percentile as a Secchi depth. So we use Secchi depth.
Depth of the lake.
Yeah, I understand. We did not use like depth variable, but what we did, we when we clean water quality data, what we did that are like some Secchi depth measure. It says Secchi depth is 1 meter and depth of lake is 1 meter. So if that is the case, in those case, like we remove those data. We did not use that because it can go like the water quality does not change over time. So we remove those data set when we're cleaning it.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's what we do here in Michigan's water quality program too, is we'll report your Secchi depth can only go so far, but it might be that the water is clearer than the Secchi would imply. Yeah. Okay. Um, so the next question is one that I had as well. So you showed the plot of property values over time, and it goes up to 2019, and then right around 2020, we saw a lot of people moving to lakefront properties and properties. I assume property values on lakefronts increased significantly around that time with the pandemic. So the question is, has that increase in property values due to the pandemic been studied, and how do you think your results might be influenced if you were to look at 2024 data right now?
Yeah, so our study goes till, as Joe, you mentioned that 2019. And we had data through like 2019 October. So Zillow released the data set 2019 October. So that's the data set we had. But I believe like lots of people like if you look into like other research, not directly water quality research, but other research like people's value for open space, value for parks, and everything goes up after like pandemic. So people like give a pause and think through that way. So in that, like I don't have any particular study that I can mention, but I can have a guess that uh, lake and lakefront properties value got increased after the pandemic. If we consider and take care of all the other housing market disruption due to pandemic, if we take care of that, then we will find that we will find that maybe it is increased. But that is my guess, but I cannot tell for certain.
Sensible. Okay, thank you. All right, the next question. This person says, we're in the middle of a similar study in Madison, Wisconsin right now. Question has come up in our committee meetings about the effect of water quality, specifically clarity, on commercial real estate and multifamily homes. Did you look at this as well, or did you find that measuring the effect of single family houses excuse me, was significant or sufficient?
So we look into single family houses, particularly in this study. And that way, like we had to remove this like multifamily houses and also like apartment houses and condos, because like their sales does not reflect on time. So it is really hard to get those corrected data set through Zillow. So if we have like any other data set in national level, we could have done that. But in our study, we particularly focus on single family houses. And I believe single family houses and multifamily house and other thing might have a little bit difference, but I will not like I'll not wait on like too much difference about like because both are people's behavior due to water quality response. So I would say like in the housing market, it will go quite similar, but it might have different. But we did not look at that thing.
Um, all right. Kind of a bigger picture question now. So, how have you seen the results from this study used in literature or in popular discussion or by conservation professionals? Have you seen this study being used anywhere?
Not directly yet, but like as a person myself, so most of my study, so that way I do I call myself like turning scientific information into decision science. So what I do is that, okay, if you want to take a decision, how we will decide if you have this value. So I'm thinking like when people are taking a conservation effort, they will have a partial value through property value, saying that okay, I'm looking at this lake, that many houses it has. So this study says around like if we improve water quality 10%, it will increase that much of value. So that will be a justification of conservation effect. People can use that way. And also like we can think about that this type of information can disseminate through the real estate market and people are aware of that. And if people are aware, then they will be thinking and taking care of their nearby lake, saying that okay, if we take care of our lake, then my property value will increase. So I'll not dump anything directly in that water, such that like my property value will go down if the lake has bad water quality. So both way it will be win-win, I think.
That makes a lot of sense. And you mentioned something there that this through property values, we have a partial valuation of the benefits of water quality improvements. Can you say a little bit more for folks that maybe aren't trained economists in terms of how the values that you derived here reflect on a broader societal value from water quality?
Yeah, so we are thinking just about say very local within 100-meter and 300-meter property values. But this, for example, see a big lake and people farther away can come. For example, Lake Tahoe in Nevada. Uh, so people all over the place from California and other places come to visit there and do recreation and other thing. So we are just capturing what is the nearby property value capitalization, but we are leaving away so many other things that can happen. And but for example, people might even have existing value in there, saying that, okay, Lake Tahoe exists, so I'm happy for that. So those type of valuation is there. Or further away, some cultural value can be there. So those type of thing we are living away. We are just getting a partial part of the valuation, but but there is like much bigger value that can be attributed through other sources that we did not consider here.
That's great. Okay, we have another question from the audience. So would a land conservancy tax to protect the lake increase property values?
That's like, we cannot say like directly, because that study does not look into that tax part. But we're looking into, if lake water quality increases, property value increases. If lake conservancy tax given through that conservation happens, improve the water quality, our study suggests that property value increases. So there are like multiple boxes need to be checked in, and then you can say, okay, yeah, it does.
That makes sense. If you were to do this study again, what if there was one data source or data set that you could have that, you know, you were really curious about or that you think is really important, what additional data would you love to have for this analysis?
Yeah, so yeah, as I mentioned before, so there are like some non-disclosure state. So some state we don't have much property values. And also like one other method that we are really interested is that we can do is like as a time series data. But as this like measurement of water quality is not like over time that much, so I wish like we had. So for some of the lake in Minnesota, they have every year measurement, and those are really good. And I wish like we could have done those type of analysis. So we tried in this analysis, and it's in our appendix, and we did not get result that is robust and that we can claim something out of it, but still we put it in the appendix saying that data does not support anything. It is like dearth of data that we cannot do. But I wish we had those.
That's interesting. I think I need to dive into that appendix a little bit more then. Okay, next question is, are there ways to account for spatial dynamics in your type of analysis? This person is thinking of water quality effects on property values might be higher for a clean lake surrounded by lakes with poor water quality, as opposed to a clean lake surrounded by other clean lakes. So the context of the lake. Is there a way to see if that type of pattern exists?
Yeah, that's definitely, but we did not look into, we just looked into very localized effect. That's what we are looking into within 100-meter and 300-meter. And our study, like one of the distance-based model, shows that after like 1,000 meter, the effect is insignificant. But we did not take into account the regional lake water quality that you suggested, which will be really interesting. And I wish we do that. So it can be another variation. So in what we did is like we match one property to its nearest lake. So for example, nearest lake that is more than 4 hectares. So our lake size, minimum lake size is 4 hectares. For example, say one property, there is a very nice lake and its like water quality is good, but it is more than 2 kilometers. But that property has a very small lake that is more than 4 hectares, but is still not good water quality. We attributed that to that, not the regional effect.
Like, okay, this is kind of like the lightning round. We've got all sorts of questions coming in, but I appreciate them from the audience. And so the next question is, I'd be curious if you could do a few case studies. For example, Lake Carmi in Vermont, where this person who wrote this question lives, is very eutrophic and has gotten significantly more eutrophic over the past couple of decades. So they wonder if you'd see property values tank around this particular type of lake.
Yeah, so our argument for this study is like getting out of regional. So there are like lots of studies has been done, and we said that, okay, let's get given like average estimate throughout the nation such that like national level policy can formulate out of it. So we did not look into like specific lake. Maybe Lake Carmi is in our data set, and yeah, I cannot tell on top of my head, but it might be. So we did not look into that, unfortunately. But that would be really valuable to look into one specific lake, and it has lots of properties still going on. Then we can look into it.
Thank you. All right. I'm going to give one last call for questions from the audience, and while I allow folks time to type in if they'd like, this is the last webinar that we'll have for the MGLP this spring. So I just want to say thank you to the folks in the audience that have been participating in the webinars. And we'll be starting the webinars back up in the fall. I think our first one is in October. So we take a break for the field season while everybody's either out studying or conserving or recreating on our lakes in the area. So we'll see everybody in the fall. We do have one more question. Oftentimes utility isn't linear. Do you find that to be the case in your study? So if water quality decreased 10%, home prices might decrease at the same rate versus a different rate, like a 1.8% decrease.
Yeah, so that way our study goes, so we are claiming that like we're looking into the marginal. So within those marginal space, we want to claim that it is linear, but we did like in the appendix some non-linear model, like semi-log model, that can like give non-linearity in it. But when we are studying like NLA part, we are saying that, okay, this is like moving to pristine condition. It is non-linear movement, but it can give you the upper bound, but not exact estimate. So when we are talking about NLA, we are discussing that, okay, it gives upper bound estimate, but not exact.
All right. I see no more questions. So at this point, we will conclude the webinar. Again, thank you, Saleh. Really appreciate you taking the time to share your results. And of course, all of the work that you and the team put into generating these results and publishing them. So thank you. And to the attendees, thank you for attending. And thank you for the work you do to conserve our inland lakes. And we will see you again in the fall. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day.